Alright folks, last lesson we talked about a few types of tissues that make up membranes and glands. Now we're going to cover connective tissues. Connective tissues are a bit of a catch-all. They're tissues that have a different type of matrix, so they aren't just squishy cells floating around in fluid connected to other squishy cells. There's 6 types of connective tissue, so there's a whole lot to cover in this video. Let's get into it. First up is areolar tissue. This type of tissue is called loose connective tissue, and is basically the glue that keeps organs and other tissues stuck in place, so they aren't falling apart. It has a gel-like consistency with some fibers that are inside and that are used to hold organs in place. The interesting thing about areolar tissue is that while it holds organs in place, it also allows them to stretch or move around as needed. Kind of like tying a boat to a wharf. You have to have enough rope tight enough so that the boat won't float away, but loose enough so that it won't sink if the tide comes up. Next is adipose tissue. This is fat, and it's used to store energy and provide some protection to the body by preventing heat loss and cushioning impacts. Fibrous connective tissue, or dense connective tissue, consists of thick bands of fibers. These are found in places like tendons or ligaments and provide support or structure. Unlike the loose connective tissue, they don't stretch or provide as much movement, so you're going to find them in places where a strong structure is needed, like between bones and muscles or joints. Now we're going to start getting into the weird ones. Bone cells, or osteons, are cells that sit in a matrix of solid calcium, as opposed to interstitial fluid that most cells sit in. Their job is to create a new bone by pulling calcium from the bloodstream and making bone, or by removing the bone by putting the calcium back into the blood. This is typically why older people have brittle bones, and it's a large part of why calcium is so important in their diet. Cartilage is similar to areolar tissue in that it sits in a gel, but in the case of cartilage, the gel is much thicker and has like a gristle type of consistency. You'll find cartilage mostly between bones, where it acts as a lubricant and a cushion, making sure our bones don't rub against each other as we move them. Last type of connective tissue is blood. Blood is another weird type of tissue. While most tissues sit in one place, blood flows around, and the cells inside of it are mobile and floating everywhere. We'll talk a lot about the composition of blood when we discuss the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system, but for now, know that its main functions are transportation of nutrients and protection from diseases.